Hi everyone, it is Stephanie with Mental Health and Healthy Eating. Today I thought we would talk about the topic of learning to allow others to love you and doing it in an unconditional way. I don't think it's a topic that's covered a lot in the PTSD, abuse, narcissistic background, relationships. I don't think it's talked about as much. I think it's more the topic of learning to love yourself, which is a topic we'll talk about and I think is important. That's just a topic that kind of came up in my head and I've been thinking about lately. And I kind of want to talk about my story, my recovery-ish, because we're always recovering and we're always doing better. Some mechanisms I've learned, and then maybe opening up a forum in the comments to talk about, things that you guys have done, things you learned that could help me and help others. 'Cause that's what this is all about, us helping each other. But I guess jumping in, just a preface for this video and most likely my future videos, I will only be using first initials. There are innocent bystanders in my story that don't need their name put out there. I don't want to involve family. I don't want to involve my friends and my abusers / people that were not very good to me in my life. I don't want to say their name. One, just because I do respect their privacy even after things they've done to me. And also, in my head, I guess saying their name in a way kind of gives them power over me that I really don't want them to have. Sorry. But starting off, just a little bit more of a preface. Starting off on my story. My mom and dad had 2 kids. They had my brother, A, in 93, and had me, Stephanie, in 95. We were 19 months apart. I guess my brother was mentally and physically handicapped, intellectual disabilities. So for majority of our relationship that we had together, it was very much I was older sister, older sibling. And that does come into relevance a little bit throughout it, so I just wanted to preface that. But my parents got divorced when I was a year and a half, more closer to 2. We then moved into my mom's childhood home, where my grandmother and my mom's older biological brother, Kay, so my uncle, lived. I will not get into my mom's background prior to me because that's not my story to share, nor was I there to have any details that I could share. But my mom had a tendency to have very unhealthy relationship with men, and that's probably where the conditional love comes in from her. Her love with them was very conditional. It was, she bought them things, she paid for their things, she paid their bills, she moved in, she became their kids' mother figure. What they want, they got, and in that, my brother and me were put on the back burner, and our upbringing was mostly my grandma, and in some way my uncle's responsibility. My mom did come back into my life about 12, but we will talk about that probably a little bit later in this video and probably in a later video about just hers and my relationship. But diving in a little bit about each person. So like I said, my mom was very me-centric, but me-centric as in I'm going to do what my boyfriend wants me to do, and if that doesn't involve you, sorry. My grandmother, I have to say, was a person that loved me very much. Probably the closest thing in that family I had to unconditional love. but I think she had mental health issues she needed to address um, through her childhood, through her early marriage with my grandfather, with him struggling with alcoholism. Um, I mean, he had recovered long before my mom was born, but I am sure that was a strain on their marriage. As, I mean, it probably was. And her children were very given what they want, got their way, and expected that into adulthood because that was not even, it wasn't even a choice. It was more of an expectation. Like, I expected to be treated that way. It was more of they viewed it as a right, not a privilege. But yeah. But she's taught me a lot of who I am today. Baking, cooking, crafting, love of children, love of animals. That's very much my grandmother. Yeah. My uncle, on the other hand, I will not completely bash him. I will say that there are things that were good about him. Taking me to museums, taking me to the zoo, playing with me, having tea parties, letting me do his hair, letting me follow him around. I mean, yeah. But he also had a lot of mental health. I will never diagnose. I am not a doctor. That is not my wheelhouse. That is not my knowledge. That is not my forte. But through research for myself, I do believe he has OCD, and him and me had he was very narcissistic towards me. But getting into that with the OCD, tendencies I saw, flipping light switches on and off, shutting doors, opening and closing them while doing that, on, off, open, shut, like saying the words, going back to check things that are doing it, having to repeatedly check things having to be done and done specific ways and things put in specific places. And then if you broke that routine, like, for instance, if you're sick and you just don't feel like getting up at that exact second to throw a Kleenex away, and you sit it down, it would become World War III. You would literally be, I mean, I would do something, didn't put the cap on completely, didn't throw Kleenex away, didn't put something in the right way or do it the right way, didn't shut the trash can, like, very simplistic things. Like, if you're a parent, yeah, you're frustrated, like, I've told you a million times, like, do this, but then you move on, he would shut me out for days over things like that, like, not talking to me, not telling me what I did, and I would be closed off. It'd be the silent treatment for days over things like that. So that kind of goes into me now. I constantly want to know people have it done, and then if I don't do it that way, I'm extremely apologetic, and people are like, it's all right, it happens, like, I wish you did it that way, but, like, it didn't, we can't go back. And that's just kind of followed me into my adulthood, which has affected my relationships, like I've point of this conversation. He was very quick to anger, very quick to point out your flaws, expecting you to apologize for, like, the Kleenexes. I would have to be like, he would get shut up for days. He would finally explode. It could be an hour to 3 days to a week before he tells you why he's mad at you, and then he explodes at you, and then you are expected to like you get a lashing for like with words. I mean, there's physical, but yeah, not there yet. But it would be like hours to a week of no talking to like it was a pattern. So not talking, exploding at you, pointing, and then it would be like he would go into a tangent about something other than what you're talking about. It could start with the Kleenex, and then it's going to something I did that he deemed unacceptable 3 years prior, and it would just like be this like tunnel, like you would just like get deeper and deeper and deeper, and then it would just be like, and then you look at you at the end, and it was like, now what do you have to say? And it would be me in tears because I just got berated over a Kleenex, to me saying, I'm sorry, I promise I will never do it again, to him saying, you've promised this before, how do I know it's going to be different? And it's literally me almost on my knees begging him, and like, okay, I'll forgive you this time. And that was a constant factor in my life. I mean, stories. I mean, the earliest, I'll just share some stories before I get in my teenagehood, which is kind of where the conditional love really comes into, but it's also childhood as well. Earliest memory, I was probably about 4, maybe 5, but I'm pretty sure I was closer to 4. I don't know if this is a typical thing for kids with divorce, but I heard I didn't have, like I told you, I didn't have many friends, because of the relationship, but 4 or 5, but the thing I said, I don't know if all kids of 4 do this, I'm just gonna live with my dad, like 4 or 5, throwing your Tinder tantrum, but I was gonna live with my dad. I don't even know what it was about, and he's so quick with anger. It's like, okay, and he grabs a trash bag, and just throws my stuff in there. I mean, throwing like literal clothes, underwear, t-shirts, toys, like important toys, throwing in a bag. And I mean, don't be wrong, there are sitcom shows, like typical things, like, okay, well, let me help you pack. And usually the kid's like, oh, what? No. And then like, yeah, you don't say things like that. No, he legit was like kicking me out, like at 4 or 5, like throwing my things in a bag. And then he starts trying to undress me to put regular clothes on. And I'm just like fighting him. I'm like, I don't want to go. Like, it got to the point I'm like, you're crazy, man. Like, I don't think I said that, but like, I was pretty much saying it. And he's like, well, if you're not going to leave, then you're just out. And he literally sat me outside. And I don't know if you guys, this is like November, so I don't know if you guys are from Missouri or know like similar Missouri weather. I mean, could it be mild in November? Yes. But for the most part, it's cold in November. And I mean like coat, mittens, hat weather. Like, this is the end of November. Like, I'm pretty sure this is right after like probably the week of Thanksgiving probably. So it's pretty cold outside. Like, you're seeing your breath. That's cold. So like, I mean, he sat me outside 4 or 5 years old. At that time, I was lanky. I was all skin and bones. And I'm standing outside in a t-shirt and underwear. I mean, like a t-shirt, like an undershirt, like the thin white t-shirt and underwear. And I guess it's coming from my grandma. Like, my grandma kind of just like told him not to do it, try to argue, try to let me in, but like he was like, no, like blah, 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 you can't do that, like blah, 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 she needs to learn. And I mean, I was probably outside 40, 50, maybe an hour. I mean, I didn't have the greatest concept of time, but it felt like forever. I mean, legitimately, I was probably out there, I'm not going to lie, probably 30, 40 minutes. But to me, it felt like forever. My grandma literally waited for my uncle to, like, go to his room and, like, lock himself in his room to let me in. I'm 4 or 5, and yes, I threw a Tinder tantrum, and you should be reprimanded. But you're 4 and 5, and you're locked out of your house? But like, I would never do that to my child. I mean, I don't know. But that's a big one. Probably another one, I don't know if you guys ever watched Princess Diaries, But I was big, like I said, my brother's mentally, physically handicapped. My uncle wasn't the, like I said, my mom wasn't involved. My uncle's not the one that would drive me to my friends unless I begged, and I had like profusely planned ahead. And I'm sorry, not many 5 to 10-year-olds plan their own play dates. But you know, if I didn't have it planned, I wasn't going nowhere. Let alone sleepovers. But I did a lot of acting out movies in my room by myself. I did it for about every movie I saw. This was the early 2000s when Princess Diaries came out. I acted out the story. As you know, the one scene, if you watch the movie, there's a scene where she leaves her note for her grandma saying she can't do this and she's going. At this time, I was supposed to be spending the weekend with my mom. She had a new boyfriend at the time. She wanted me to spend the weekend with her down at his house because she was currently living with him. So the thing was he was going to drop me off after work at my mom's work. My mom was going to take me there, so on and so forth. That morning, I was acting out Princess Diaries in my room. I wrote that letter on a piece of paper. His room and my room were joined. So, like, you had to go through my room to get to his room. So he found the letter, and he jumped to the conclusion that I was writing that letter to my grandmother. And I'm like, no, I was playing a game. I was acting out Princess Diaries. Like, it's in the movie. Like, I swear, I don't want to leave. And he's like, no, you just want to leave. You don't want to live here anymore. We've given you everything. And it was just like, no. And it did not matter how many times I told him, no. Like, that letter is a prop. It's not real. It didn't matter. He got that mad and nothing was going to convince him. So it was about time for me to drop my mom's work, And I get in the car and there's a letter in there. And I don't remember those exact words, but it's like, I don't want you to be my uncle anymore, and I'm gonna leave and you're never gonna see me again. Like something along those lines. And I was like, well, what is this? He's like, I don't know, it's from a movie. And yet again, silent treatment. And I mean, like, other than those words, oh, it's just a prop or it's just from a movie, I didn't get talked to the whole 30-minute drive to my mom's house. My mom's work. I don't know why I keep saying work. My mom's work. And as a kid, I was like, don't you say anything to her. You say anything to her, you won't have a home to come back to. So I'm just like, okay. So, I mean, it was things like that. I would go home and be bashed for simple things. But then we'd go to school the next day and you'd talk about how smart, intellectual I was, and creative I was. And I acted out whole movies. And I would do this and I would do that and I'm an amazing writer. And then I'd go home and I'm literally told how big of a piece of shit I am. You're not good at math. You're not this. You don't get your math, so I'm not going to help. You're a waste of space. Like, it was that. But then I'd go, and then the next day I'd be like the most beautiful, talented girl on planet Earth. And it was, if I was doing things his way, I was loved. That's what I'm talking about, conditional love. I did it his way, how he expected me to behave, how he expected me to act. Then it was okay. So I guess fast forward into the teenhood. My mom's last boyfriend was the summer before 6th grade, Labor Day weekend of 2006. My mom, I guess, wanted to make it up front to my grandma, everything, because this was her last relationship. It was always my mom's last relationship, though. It was always, I'm never going to date again. I'm going to be the mom that you deserve. I'll just be alone. Yeah. More on that story when we cover that story. But backtrack a little. So we're going to Diamond, Missouri originally to see some family heirlooms. And then we were close to Oklahoma. My grandmother asked to go see her grandparents' grave because she was unable to ever see it. Her grandparents died when my great-grandmother was 10 years old. So my grandma never got to meet them nor see their graves. So we're in Oklahoma. We were on a road that had no speed limit, and a car came over the hill, probably going 80 miles per hour. My mom was pulling into this cemetery, and we ended up rolling about 4 or 5 times into a ditch. My grandmother was an avid smoker for the majority of her teenhood into adulthood. She did quit, but she had the effects, so she had oxygen tanks. The oxygen tanks had came up. They had crushed her neck, her spine, her ribs, her arm. One of her fingers ended up getting amputated. Well, it had been amputated throughout the car accident. We don't quite know whatever happened, how it got removed, but it was not there. Sorry, I'm trying not to get emotional. And she was in the hospital for 6 months. I'm sorry. I'm gonna get through this. She was in the hospital for 6 months. She ended up contracting a staph infection that led her to pretty much be unresponsive, and she passed away. Sorry. Whew. So yeah, in that, at about 11, I lost the one person that I think, up to my fiance, has ever really loved me for me and without any expectations or having to be a certain way to receive love. Sorry. So those were hard years. Going through puberty, like I've mentioned, about 13 is when I got diagnosed with PCOS. Yeah. So in that, a lot of hormones, a lot of teenage angst, and in that teenage angst, my uncle being hot-headed and wanting me to be a certain way, we butted heads a lot. I wanted to hang out with friends. I had to be home by 8. I had to be home by 6:30 from friend's house, and I had to be in bed by 8. And this probably was all through middle school. I think it got up in like maybe freshman, sophomore year. I was able to stay up to 8:30. Ooh. But I wasn't allowed to friends past 6:30. I was never taught to drive because he didn't want me to have the freedom. He loved having control over me. And he had control of my mom because when my grandma died, like I said, my brother was mentally and physically handicapped. It was more of, my mom has to work at this point because she was the only one that worked. My uncle doesn't work. I don't even know how to explain that, but he didn't work. So his expectation was she didn't date. He controls the money. He controls the bills. And he takes care of my brother. Like, that's what he was. He literally had control of all our money, all our bills, our freedom, and all he had to do was take care of my mental and physically handicapped brother. And I mean, like, he didn't even really do that well. Like, he changed my brother, put clothes on him, and, like, put him on video games all day. Other than when he was at school. Like, okay. And then on the weekends, my mom and me took care of my brother. But, so he pretty much took our lives over. My mom handed him pretty much our freedom on a silver platter. Like I said, I didn't learn to drive. He probably took me on 2 driving lessons. He was overbearing in that. I'm not gonna lie, I dinged a pole. And I mean, I did, but he took me into a busy parking lot after he had pretty much only been letting me ride up and down a deserted street, and then decided to take me out on this, and was yelling at me the whole time. I mean, but he just stopped. You're not learning to drive. If you need to go anywhere, I'll drive you. Like I said, I had to be home by 6:30. I think the first time I was ever allowed to stay out past like 6:30 was literally my senior prom. Yeah. At 18 was the first time I was ever outside of my house past 6:30. Without them, I should say. Because, I mean, my mom and me had gone probably to a movie or something before that. But other than that, if I was not with them, I was not at home by 6:30. Until my senior prom. And, I mean, I wasn't allowed to have a boyfriend. I didn't need a boyfriend. I didn't get to do extracurriculars because I was supposed to focus on my curriculars. Like, I had no outside life. My uncle, my mom, my brother were it. Like, not many people want to hang out with anybody anyways, that they can't be out past 6. Like, so I was sheltered, I guess, is the easiest way to say it. And when I followed those rules and I didn't say anything and it was yes sir, no ma'am, I minded my P's and my Q's on them of being the silent, smile on my face, compliant child. Life was fine. It wasn't fine because I'm suffering, but like the moment I just towed a line, asked to stay out a little longer, or asked to be on the phone a little bit longer, or try to push the boundary just a little bit, it was yet again silent treatment, physically getting pushed into my room, and the door being closed and locked, like him putting a chair so I can't open my door. Like I said, the silent treatment was probably the worst. And that is a tactic that narcissists use a lot. It kind of makes you feel like you're going crazy. I can't explain unless you've experienced it before. But that's been a big thing in my relationships. When they go silent, and it could be I don't have anything to say. If they go silent, it's automatically, what did I do wrong? Like, it still comes up. And I've had boyfriends, knowing this about my past, use it against me. I mean, I think that's the hardest. Like, I'll go into a little bit later, but like, when someone you want to be in a relationship and you feel vulnerable enough to tell them that, or comfortable enough to tell them that, like something that makes you vulnerable, and them using it against you, that's probably the worst. But going into college, I did apply for a school that was not nearby, and I was going to have to be in the dorm. I was told constantly no. It was the wrong choice. They wouldn't support me if I chose that. I then picked a more local school, probably about 20 minutes from my house, at most 15-20 minutes. Also then considered moving into dorms, and I was told it was an unrequired, an unnecessary item an unexpected expense, I'm sorry. And this is kind of where they used my brother's relationship me. And when I was talking about being the older sibling, your brother needs you, and your brother's going to feel abandoned, and your brother's going to miss you. And how are we going to explain this to him? And I did. I kind of got like guilt tripped a lot too. And I want to hang out with friends. Well, what about your brother? Like, that's your ultimate best friend. You're just going to abandon him? He's not going to understand. Or if you get home late, he'll wake up and then he won't be able to fall back asleep. Or it was always, what about your brother? What about your brother? What about A? Like, how's that going to affect him? So they used my giving nature and always putting people ahead of myself to guilt trip me into things a lot. So through college, yet again, did not drive, got dropped off every day. I didn't go to one party, one event. In my college, yet again, wasn't allowed to date, told I couldn't date, couldn't be out past a certain time. And this kind of gets the interesting part of my life and this relationship. In this, right after college, I decided to take the dating situation into my own hands. I will briefly color that because, yet again, it's another story. I'm just going to talk about it more on the family side. So the summer after I graduated, I went on a dating website that shall not be named. I lied and I went on a couple dates with a few guys, and my uncle would find out, and I would be, usually he would find out but not say anything, just treat me really weird and like be super weird when I went out. Because at this time I had just got my driver's license, and I would be like, I'm going, because I had some friends through high school and through college that I did quote unquote hang out with, or I'd say I'd like be going to like look for school supplies or something, because I was being at the time I was a sub, but I was also doing like long-term sub positions. But I would say I'm just gonna go hang out with a friend for a little bit. I'd be home at 6:30 time, so forth and so on. And then I would get broken up with, and my uncle would get involved, and then he would be like, see, this is why you don't date, you just need family, you're always going to have family, you're always going to have us, you could just live here forever, like, we'll be here for you, blah, 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 blah. But then you're dumb for going on those dates. This is why you don't date. You're not mature enough to date. You don't know, you're too naive, you're too dumb. So after you just got your heart broken by somebody, and looking back at those relationships, it was the same relationship with them. It would be, they would love me and say I'm great, and I'm this and I'm that, and they could see a future with me and all that. And then the moment I do something they don't like, or I stop giving as much as they think I should be giving, or I didn't give enough, it would end. And I mean, I did talk about my past relationship with the eating disorder. Same thing. He was I didn't do things his way, and it would become an argument. Like, you're just gonna go back to 248 pounds once we're married, because you're not gonna want to keep doing this. You're doing this for me. Why would you do, like, yeah. But I guess just noticing that was a conditional relationship. I allowed my outside relationship, friendships, looking at friendships in high school, friendships in college, friendships in adulthood, like noticing the same I had the same behaviors of I would give and I'd follow your rule and how you wanted me to act. But the moment I questioned it, or I got to a point that I couldn't give any more than I was already giving, then I would be quote unquote like bashed. Or, I mean, friends go silent, then you never talk, and then it's like, because I didn't give enough. The moment I stopped the meal truck or the meal cart stops, that friendship disappeared. And I think it honestly was because I was used to it. That was the expectation growing up from my uncle, knowing that, and I let that influence my outside relationships. And like I said, I am a very giving person. I will put everyone above me, and that's not always a bad trait, but it can get out of hand and it can become toxic. So kind of going into the recovery part of it all. Like I said, I met my fiance. I met him in 21. Wow, 21. Sorry. I met him in October of 2021. And yeah, 21. And he is the first person to show me that there is no expectation. If you love somebody, you love that person for everything they are, the good, the bad, the ugly. For instance, like I said, I love cooking. So I make him breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. And people ask me, why do you do that? And I guess it's because I was always expected to make everybody's lunch and dinner, and I made meals for my family, and it was just an expectation. And if I didn't do it, I was quote unquote punished. I mean, like, for instance, if I didn't get up the first thing on Sunday morning and throw something in the crock pot or prep dinner before I went to church, because I went to church on my own, you're not going to do it, so we just did it ourselves. So we're just going to have to eat out because you didn't make anything. Now your brother is going to starve. First time I made my fiance's breakfast, he's like, you made me breakfast? Yeah. And then I packed him a lunch. Wait, you packed my lunch? And he was just so grateful for it. And it was just like, I don't expect you to do this. And once something isn't an expectation anymore, there's kind of a joy in it. And people ask me, why do I do it? I'm like, because he doesn't expect it of me. First time I did something, I couldn't even tell you what it is, but I just know, to this day even, I apologize profusely every time he's like, you didn't do this, or like, and it's not like you didn't do this. It's more like, hey, you forgot to do this, or hey, you forgot to do that, or, can you not do such and such? And I'm saying I'm sorry, and I just put my growing up, if I didn't apologize profusely, you were gonna go silent on me. And he was like, it's cool, like, just don't, can you just like not do it again, like, kind of thing. Like, we're still learning about each other and what our expectations are for one another. And I mean, we've been living together for about a year now, and I think you're always learning stuff, little things that bother, pet peeves of each other. But yeah, but there's also you learning, so kind of going back into the topic of this, learning to allow yourself to be loved unconditionally. I am not, like I said, I am not used to people doing for me. So vice versa, him making me food, or him cleaning up, or anything. I'm like, I got it. I'm so used to doing for myself. And he's like, I can do it too. It's like, oh. And hearing someone say, I love you every day, multiple times a day. I'm not gonna lie, my mom and uncle were not the people to say I love you every day. They were the one that wouldn't say I love you when they got off the phone. They weren't the one that say I love you before they went to bed. If I didn't physically say I love you, my family wouldn't say I love you. Our says I love you probably 20 plus times a day. And I'm the same. But it took time to learn to allow myself to let someone love me. And it's not easy. And when you don't love yourself because you've never learned to love yourself, and when you've never experienced someone loving you in a way that there's no expectation back, you do blank, I love you. That's how I grew up. I did it my uncle's way. I was loved. I didn't do his way. I was bashed and hated on. My mom picked up the behavior. I didn't do things the way my mom expected. I wasn't loved. I was told how bad of a person I was. Boyfriends prior, as long as I was giving, we were cool. We were golden. Never got told I love you, but we were golden. The moment the want became something I was unwilling to be able to give, because something that I did better than my mom was I did know when enough was enough, and I would stop doing that, and then they're like, well, then I don't need you. You are a waste, so I'm going to throw you away. Friendships, I gave so much, and then when they had taken everything they needed or wanted, or there was nothing left, they were gone. I am now in a space with my fiance where I give and he gives and we give to each other, and it's never ending. There's no expectation. I have no expectation of him. I mean, I have like the expectation of respect, love, and kindness, but like human nature. And same from him, he respects, honesty, respect, like the common human nature things and things you put into a marriage are expectations, but there's no superficial, like you step out of bounds of something, then you no longer are deserving of my love. We love each other in the good, the bad, and the ugly. But learning to accept that has been a process. And the biggest mechanism or thing I've had to do is learn to communicate. Talking is everything. I mean, that's how I've built. I have 2 amazing best friends. And the biggest thing I've had to do, is learn to express to them that there's a boundary and they've crossed it. Or I've noticed I've given a lot and it'd be like, I can't give anymore. But my biggest thing is, if that's going to affect our friendship, then we need to evaluate our friendship. And have I lost friends over the past year of saying, I'm giving and I'm giving and I'm giving, and that seems like the moment I say no, then all of a sudden we're not as close. That shows me that friendship was not an unconditional giving, true relationship. And my 2 best friends, do we expect things of each other? Yes. If I ask my friends to do something, they're going to do it. And I'm getting married right now. I'm asking a lot of them. But I also know if they said no, I would be fine with that. So like one mechanism, communication, constant talking about it, expressing your needs and your wants and your boundaries. Another mechanism is telling people when you need it. Kind of goes back to the communication, but like telling them what I need. Telling them Today I don't feel like I'm worthy of being loved. I don't feel like I deserve you. So being open and honest, and like, is it saying that I'm seeking my fiance? Some people will say like, oh, you're just seeking a response. No, I am a word of affirmation person. That is my love language. I think it's because I never got affirmation growing up that it's something that I really seek from people. But also letting people know that, like, that's something that I enjoy hearing. I enjoy hearing that you like my company and you want me to be around. Another coping mechanism, but that kind of goes into loving myself, but being comfortable in yourself makes yourself allowing to be loved by others easier. Biggest thing is learning to be by myself. If I can't be alone in my company and love myself with no expectations, then I can't expect others to love me without conditions. If I have conditions for myself, I cannot expect others to love me without conditions. And I think the biggest one is doing this, reflecting on your past and realizing why you feel you can't accept love. You have to be able to reflect. It hurts. Going to counseling and having to reflect and look back and talk about it now, it doesn't get easier. It doesn't. It hurts. But the more you speak the truth and you realize during those times you weren't crazy and you weren't making it up and it wasn't in your head and it really happened, it makes it easier if you can like the whole thing about history. If you don't talk about history, you can't expect it not to happen again. So things have to be talked about, things have to be brought to light, things have to be talked about for you to be able to like understand where that mistake was or where that bad moment that affected your behavior or your personality, and realize that that's not okay how you got treated and you deserve better and you will get better. It makes it easier to love when you realize that was not right the first time and what you're experiencing right now is good. So yet again, thank you for listening to me spiel. Maybe this made no sense to you at all. I know I'm a little bit out everywhere, and I don't know if I really gave you any answers, but this was nice to talk about and kind of like reflect on all the craziness and how I was expected to act and how it affected current relationships and how I'm slowly realizing I am worthy of love from other people and that I can love other people and I can accept that love that they give me, because my 3 people, my 2 best friends and my fiance are probably the best people I know, and I am thankful for them every day, and I'm very thankful that they do love me, and I am thankful every day I am getting better and better at accepting that love and accepting help and accepting that even in my worst days and my crazy day and my crazy hair, they still love me. Yet again, if you have want to share your story, you want to message me, put a comment in the comment, and I will reply back. I will. And those few people that have watched my previous 2 videos, my first one, my introduction, where I kind of talked about eating disorders, and my second one where I made some healthy chicken drumsticks that were amazing. And yet again, just a quick housekeeping thing. I don't know my schedule yet for videos. I'm gonna kind of just make them as I come. The summer is gonna be pretty easy. I am getting married next month. That's not the correct number of days left, but so into July there probably won't be any videos, but My plan is to have at least one, especially when school starts, have one on Tuesdays, Mondays, or Tuesdays. So probably Mondays, Tuesdays. One of those 2 days you will get a sit down talking video, probably about health, and probably on Tuesday. So I'm hoping, my plan is Mondays sit down, Tuesday cooking video. Worst case scenario, like things have to be switched around, we will probably have Friday sit down, Saturday cooking, but I can promise you at least once a week you will have a sit down video, and at least once a week you will have a cooking video. With this being my first week, yes, you got the grace of a couple more than 2 videos, because I'm doing this video and I'm hoping to do a cooking video tomorrow. But thank you for listening to me. And yet again, please, please, please watch, please, please share. And please, please let me know if these are helping at all. Because I know it's helping me talk. Thanks. Bye, guys.